to reverse things a few years later. And he stood up and says, no, you won't harm these people even though they're our enemy. We will be proportional. They showed up, they're Republicans, they'll get 3 seats, we'll take 6 seats, because that's how we showed up. And he defended the minority. See how it works? It was a miracle. Guess what? The leadership on both sides, the Christian leadership and the Old Guard leadership, could not control their troops. Now, the leadership joined forces, and guess who was their target? Okay? Yeah. I became really vilified statewide at that point. And like I said, my rules passed in the '96 State Convention. Senator Graham took them to Washington, had them studied to see if they were constitutional. And they came to the Rules Committee and said, if you do this kind of stuff, I'm going to leave the party. It is. But everybody knew what I was proposing was constitutional. But it would collapse the American political system. That's how powerful this stuff is, with party rules. We can exercise discipline, authority over our candidates, over the on-ramp to power, which is the primary. What if the state says no? It's our party. We can withdraw from ballot access. We don't need it. That's the maturity. That's the strength. You have to understand what your weapons are. You have to understand how to use them. And you have to have the courage and the will to use them. Yes, sir?
Yeah, well, so a lot of what you're talking about is specific for like the month in between a week before the primary and the Senate District Convention and on to the state convention. You know, how to win people over during that time.
Well, this paper I'm showing you right here, plausibility. The presentation you had before me is education to give you confidence in what things like the rule of law. What are the goals? When you have a conference like this that teaches you about property rights, most people don't. Like Deborah was pointing out, that's a real important one because people don't know property rights. So through the whole year, you're teaching the right things. But at the end of each presentation, and think about all the literature and articles you've ever read, where does it get really weak? What do you specifically do as a tactic to make anything change? And we as a group have to study, get moral authority leadership types involved, basically pick a plan. That's why Sun Tzu says there can only be one general. There can only be one plan. Because otherwise you're going in 20 directions and you're fighting each other more than you're fighting anything else. So what I think you're trying to say is the season for the battle is from about January to June of an election year. That's the season for the battle. The season for the preparation is everything in between.
Right.
Okay? Now this is the season for preparation. That's what we're doing right now. What I'm trying to do is tell you, you have hope for a better America. You're here, so you haven't totally given up. What I'm putting before you are strategies and tactics for people of moral character. Because how are you going to reinstitute moral law, right, the rule of law, if you're not moral? No one's going to believe you. They'll think it's a trick, and they will die opposing you. That's why I tell you these stories. These things, what happened in that convention, I saw with my own eyes that without political organization, remember I had no following, I had no mailing list, I had 2 or 3 friends where one was a law professor. He said, yeah, listen, Bob, he really knows what he's talking about. And so he gave me kind of like credibility. I owned a furniture store at that time. And I did the study. But I specifically, because I was kind of, everybody was really upset. They thought I was trying to take over. And I said, okay, the best way to prove I'm not trying to take over is don't run for anything. Don't even attempt. Don't do any of the things they fear. They feared organization, competition, someone going after their treasury. And so I didn't raise money. I didn't do any of those things. I just did the homework. And I thought, for sure, well, if there's something to this, if you can change a person's heart, now you've got unity. Now you can make your caucus grow. And in that 1,000-person convention, I took the majority, a hated opponent, and turned them all into one caucus, except who? The feudal lords who lost their power. That's what happened. Now I try to play that same game at a state level. And it scares them. But you know, if anybody's seen, I don't know how many have been here for very long. Brian Crumley's seen most of my battles for the last 20 years, but they have an irrational fear of what I'm up to. And it's so irrational because I'm just one guy. Okay? It's irrational fear because they've watched from the floor of the convention, allowed to speak, I get the vote. In other words, I persuaded the crowd. I said something of a motivational, and people went, oh yeah, that doesn't sound so bad. Gee, that's called deliberation. So what do? They always turn off my mind. They always crush. And I found this is a new tactic. Guess what I've done to them? I've exposed their wickedness in the air of their piety. All these people claim to be our heroes, our good guys. They're the top leaders of our party. Well, I should say the Republican Party. But it's true in every group. These top leaders like being top leaders. And so I challenge them when they're lying. I challenge them when they're cheating. And guess what? They expose themselves. Now everybody knows they're liars and cheats. You see, because I didn't stay in my seat and go, gee, they won't play nice. I got up and I screamed until I tear my vocal cords. And see, now I know that the next round of training requires nonviolent movement. In other words, they're going to bring the police next time. They brought it this time. We were lucky. Jeremy almost got arrested. I almost got arrested. Several people almost got arrested. Now the civil rights movement already did all this, so there's plenty of case law saying if the cops even come in my vision, that's a violation of my civil rights. If I'm not hitting anybody, and I'm just trying to make parliamentary motions, they better stay out of my view. Okay, and I went to the cops, I got all their names, and I told them this. They said, well, this is civil. No, that doesn't count. You have no right to interfere with my exercising of civil rights, especially since they're cheating. In other words, they don't own that assembly. The assembly owns the assembly. And so we will have to train in this year in between. Now, Jeremy asked, what do we do, Bob, when you're charging up the aisle, as stories have said you do all the time? He says, do you want all of us to go up there with you? And I told Jeremy no, because we haven't trained anybody. Jeremy kind of understood the concepts, and a couple others said, no, Jeremy, you put one marching order out to the troops. Stay in your chairs. I'm not here to teach you violence. I don't want to riot. I grew up in the most violent school in the country, San Fernando High in Los Angeles. And so in my 10th grade year, we had, as my brother, three full-scale riots. He was trapped in the metal shop and had to basically make Bunsen burner flamethrowers to keep from being killed. I mean, you know, it was a wild time. So I've seen riots. I don't like riots. I think riots are very unsavory for free people. We're not there yet. There's no place for that. No one should encourage violence. So what did you do? We lost. We lost with maturity. We tried, we exposed them, we did everything we could. We lost and we observed. Now for this in-between year, we need to train people how to be involved with the right kinds of parliamentary behavior. When do you step forward? When do you back down? And record everything. And preparing for lawsuits. In other words, are you serious about saving America? I'm offering you a plan. So if we give plausibility to enough people, and they catch the vision, action happens with faith. Hope and plausibility equals the faith. Now if you look at page 7, this is a test. I'll get you. Go ahead and ask your question.
Well, actually, where I was really going with that was in the intro. You know, y'all with the Robertson crowd, you didn't win the first time around, right?
Total of 3 cycles. And we took over 70% of the Republican parties in the country.
Well, you took over. Does that mean you got critical mass?
Yes.
You attracted the appropriate number of people? Or
yes.
did you also bring some of the people over?